Ever wanted to know how to deal with panic attacks naturally? Hello, my successful and healthy earthlings. Mihaela Ragushi, a naturopath and founder of the Natural Health Podcast. Today I'm going to share with you a little bit more about panic attacks and how you're able to overcome them or reduce your chance of getting them naturally. And at the end of this episode, I'm going to give you an opportunity to join a health and success-oriented community by clicking below and joining the Natural Health newsletter. Welcome to the Natural Health Podcast, where we bring awareness of sustainable health in the business hustle space. Natural Health Podcast is perfect for the high-performing, business-minded individuals who want to work with their biochemistry to achieve success and optimal health. It's Friday, which means it's time for What Would I Do? In today's episode of Natural Health Podcast, we discuss this week's question. All questions are kept confidential, and I answer them and read them as if it was me. Hence why it's called What Would I Do? The information provided is not to be taken as advice and is solely for information purposes only. I'm not here to cure, treat, or provide medical advice. I'm here to educate and inform you so you're able to take steps towards optimal health. Please discuss any medical issues or lifestyle changes with your healthcare professional. Now that we got that out of the way, let's get into today's question. Okay, someone wrote in saying, I suffer from panic attacks on a monthly basis. I have tried everything and nothing helps. Is there anything you could recommend? I'm a 33-year-old female business owner and suffer from panic attacks. I eat healthy and believe I am pretty healthy. Thank you so much for writing in and being a little bit vulnerable and opening up about your anxiety and your panic attacks. I really appreciate that. That's what we're all about. We're all about getting these questions in and answering them. So what I'm about to go into is not only going to help you, it's going to help other people who, don't really want to write in. But if you do want to write in, please feel free. I will try my best to answer your question, and I have in the past. So I've answered so many questions before. Most people that have written in, I have answered their questions, and I'm so thankful because I get a lot of people writing to me saying, I didn't want to ask this question, but then someone wrote it in and I answered it. So I'm here. Just know that I'm here. Okay, let's look into panic attacks. Panic disorder is categorized by an abrupt surge of fear that reaches peak within minutes, in which 4 or more of the following symptoms develop: palpitations, sweating, trembling, shaking, feeling of choking, chest pain, nausea, feeling of dizziness, lightheadedness, feeling of unreality, fear of losing control, fear of dying, paranoia, and heat sensations. These are the things that can occur. And your panic attack may look totally different to someone else's panic attack, and you may not understand panic attacks because you've never had them. But understanding what it may look like for an individual is a huge thing, right? So essentially, I'm not going to go too much into detail about why you may be having panic attacks because you probably may have already done your research. But I wanted to just kind of glance over it, whatever you want to call it. Essentially, some individuals get panic attacks due to childhood trauma because it's associated with an onset of severe anxiety, and childhood trauma may be able to put people that they're unable to control their emotions and regulate them, and so therefore it turns into a panic attack. Other things is also acute or chronic stresses. So an individual may have had something occur in their life, loss of job, loss of family members, loss of anything, and it may have occurred that. But it's not only that, it's also like little viruses, I should call them little viruses, but these are all acute stresses or even chronic stresses to some extent, right? Substance abuse for some individuals, because it may activate the HPA axis, drugs, cocaine, opiates, nicotine, alcohol, caffeine, all of these substances that individuals may be addicted to or have them every day may be causing these panic attacks. Sleep disturbances, insomnia, and so forth, because essentially we all know, and if you don't know, you haven't listened to my stuff enough, I always blab on about how sleep affects us and how sleep is so important for us to regulate our emotions, including anxiety and so forth. Another one may be inadequate glucose supply. So essentially, if heightened anxiety can occur after a high glucose meal, which means they're reacting to the glucose, or during times of glycogen depletion, which means they're not having it. So this includes diabetes, pre-diabetes, and so forth, or individuals just not being able to control their glucose levels. Another one might be hypothyroidism, gut dysfunction, genetic disorders, and so forth. There's so many things one individual may have: anxiety or panic disorders, right? Or panic disorders, or having panic attacks. Questions. All right, here we go. Here are some questions for you. When did your panic attacks start? I know it might be a bit, stressful thinking about when they started and when was the first time or even thinking about going through one, but it helps, right? And I do want to put it out there, if at any time they get too intense, please call 000 here in Australia, get in touch with your healthcare professional, and do what needs to be done at the time. But essentially, understand when they started, why they started, what happened around the time that they started. Did you have a high glucose meal? Did you have some trauma occur? Did you have an infection? Did you get the gut bug? Did you get sick? Car sick? I don't know why car sick came into my mind. But yeah, what happened when it started? What makes the panic attacks worse and what makes them better? Some people say they get worse when I'm at work. Some people say they get better when I'm exercising. So just figure out for yourself what makes them better and what makes them worse. Are you currently seeing a counselor, psychiatrist, psychologist, healer, whatever it is that you connect to? Are you currently seeing one of them? Are you currently on any medication? This is very important to understand. What is your diet like? Are you having a high glucose sugar diet that's absolutely, you're riding a roller coaster of sugar up and down, up and down, up and down? Is that your diet? How many vegetables are you getting in? How many serves of good protein, quality protein are you getting in? What's your sleep like? Do you suffer from insomnia? Do you suffer from insomnia once a month, once a week, once a day, every day? What's your relationship with sleep? Do you have any substances that you take in, such as coffee, drugs, alcohol, smoking, anything that you that you may be having that may be impacting your HPA axis? Have you been currently, or are you currently going through a stressful time? What I mean by that is stressful for you, not stressful for anyone else. The question is directed to you. So is this situation stressful for you? And is that what triggers it? Does it usually get triggered because you can't sleep and it gets triggered? Some people have panic attacks just before sleep. Some people have panic attacks before work. Some people have panic attacks only outside of their home. These are the things that it's good to address and understand. When was the last time you had a blood test and what did that come back with? Have you been diagnosed with any conditions like hypothyroidism and so forth? Does anyone in your family also have panic attacks, like your brother, sister, mother, father, their uncle, aunties, and so forth? Is this something that runs in a family? All right, there's so many more questions, but I'm running out of time. Let's keep it short so I can give you a what would I do. Okay, so what would I do? First of all, what I would do is I would understand anxiety and panic attacks. I would understand that what I'm having and identify that it is a panic attack. So therefore I know and I'm able to know what to do next after this panic attack occurs, and that it may look different for everyone else. So once you've answered those questions that I've mentioned above, it's going to help me or you or whoever's having the panic attacks understand them better, understand what effect they have on my body. The second one is I would get in touch with someone who understands breathing, a breathing coach, a breathing mentor, whatever. Look up some breathing courses, because the breath is the anchor, right? And whilst we're having a panic attack, it's the best to anchor ourselves. Absolutely key for us to anchor ourselves. And this has helped me so much. Breathing is like, oh my gosh, absolutely amazing. The other thing I would do is I would review the medication that I'm on, if I'm on any medication. Talk to my GP or healthcare professional in regards to any diseases or anything that I've been diagnosed with, how that may affect panic attacks. In addition to that, I would eat a diet that's whole foods diet, because it's found to increase hypothalamic volume compared to the Western diet, which were associated with hypothalamus atopathy, which means dying of cells in your brain, which can link to panic attacks, anxiety, and mood disorders, right? So essentially, the other thing is I would ensure that my gut is on point. If I need to run tests to understand where my gut is at, and look at including fermented foods, prebiotic fibers, because this all feeds our gut bacteria, and helps us regulate and modulate our gut microbiome and reduce our inflammation through our gut, because inflammation may be causing the panic attacks, right? Because inflammation is an acute stressor, which I mentioned earlier. I would reduce my sugar, my alcohol, my smoking, my drug intake, right? There's so much more to go into. I would review my blood test, get my blood test done, my glucose test, my thyroid, B12, vitamin D, folate, homocysteine, any inflammation, my cortisol, liver function, and so forth, just to see what is happening inside of my body, my cholesterol and so forth. I would reduce any inflammation in my body, or what I have figured out the inflammation is coming from. The other thing that I would do is I would exercise, because often individuals with panic disorders, they stop exercising because they misinterpret their bodily sensations produced to be worsened, right? So they're like, kind of gets close to similar of having a panic attack. However, because you're breathing, you're sweating, your heart palpitation, which is what a panic attack's like, but it's exercise. So this is where you need to work with a professional to understand what a panic attack is, what exercise is, and what the difference is, and how to control your body. If I haven't, I would look at emotional freedom techniques, EFTs, known as tapping, because there's evidence-based interventions showing that it can reduce panic attacks and anxiety. I would look at magnesium, herbs such as passion flower, chamomile, lemon balm, and so forth, but work with a healthcare professional who understands these herbs, because they work differently on every individual. In addition to that, if need be, get some professional help such as Beyond Blue and so forth, calling those individuals out there that are there to help us. But the key is to know that I am safe at any given time, that whatever I'm going through, I am safe. That is absolutely key, because these panic attacks, sometimes you can feel like, oh my gosh, the world's taking over and you're not in control. Once we take that breath in and understand that we are safe, it will pass. And this is where work needs to be done with professionals, with yourself, on self-development, on breathing, on mental mindset, on so forth. So I know it's only 10 minutes I got to talk about this, and I could talk about this for years, literally days. I hope that this sheds some light to anyone who's listening who may have panic attacks, or if you want to pass this on to someone who has panic attacks. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. I'm happy to answer your questions. Just let me know, and I'll feature on a Natural Health podcast, because it can help out other people. So the more questions you give me, the more it helps out other people. And if you want to join a health and success oriented community, click below and join a Natural Health newsletter, where on Fridays you will be sent a newsletter with information about the newest research, bonuses, and specials on our podcast guests, services, and products. So much information in there for you in that little newsletter. So there you have it. Remember, thank you for joining us on Natural Health Podcast. Remember, the missing link between failure and success is your health. Content and information provided here is opinion of Mahela Raguse and is for information purposes only, and does not constitute medical advice. It is not intended to provide medical advice or take the place of medical advice or any current treatment you're undertaking. Consult your own medical professionals for any medical issues that you may be having. This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to the Natural Health Podcast. It is advised that you consult your doctor or healthcare professional in relation to any health concerns you may be having. Mahela Raguse does not take responsibility for any health consequences which occur from a person listening, viewing, or reading this content. And in no circumstances shall the Natural Health Podcast, Mahela Raguse, any guests or contributors to the Natural Health Podcast, or any employees, associates, or affiliates of Mahela Raguse be responsible for damages arising from the information provided on the Natural Health Podcast. By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this podcast as medical advice to treat any medical conditions in either yourself or others. Please note, if you're taking prescription, do not stop your medication or start a new protocol, including but not limited to supplements, diet, lifestyle changes without consulting a doctor or healthcare professional. If you or any person has a medical concern, you should consult with your healthcare provider or seek other professional medical advice. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something that you have read or heard on the Natural Health Podcast or in any linked materials. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or emergency services immediately. Neither Mahela Raguse nor the publisher of this content takes responsibility for the possible health consequences of any person or persons reading or listening or following the information in the educational content.